Okay, hi there, hi everyone. Welcome back to another Uno Tumblr video where we tell you about how to best live the startup life. Our topic for today is very interesting and important. Money matters, or to put it simply, hiring people and their compensation in a startup environment. For this particular video, I have with me a very dear friend, Dora. Hi, Dora. Welcome. She's a seasoned HR professional, and I requested her to spare some time for us and share some HR related insights on this particular topic. Dora, welcome to Uno Tumblr. Thank you so much for your time. Before we go any further, will be great if you could just quickly give us your introduction and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much, Utkarsh.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
Hello to all Uno Tumblr subscribers and followers. I have been a subscriber myself. Have been watching the interesting videos that you post.
Yeah.
So I come from a diverse HR background. Did my MBA in 2006, and post that have been with fairly young organizations in these past 16 years. Have seen a lot of organizations be successful in their startup journey, and also seen organizations who had to shut shop because they couldn't really survive the startup world.
Right.
So happy to be here to
Thank
kind
you.
of share my knowledge of HR that exists in young organizations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dora. So, and Dora has forgotten to mention she's an author as well. Yeah, that's one aspect that you should definitely tell our viewers about. She's written books for children, right? So,
Yes.
a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I have a lot of interest in communication skills as a topic, and that's something I also talk about from a corporate perspective. But what I realized while raising my two young girls, we are still relying a lot on Western literature to shape our child's thinking and expression.
Right.
The Amar Chitra Kathas one side, but anything else is very difficult to find. So I thought of venturing into this field as well. Have published 3 books,
Wow.
which are picture books. 3?
They
Yeah.
1 to 3?
Yeah.
I'd only known about 2.
Yeah, so 3 children's books.
Uh-huh.
These are aimed at kids with 2 to 6 years of age. Sorry, HR jargon. Sorry. So kids with 2 to 6
Right.
years who are in that age bracket, early readers, so they can kind of navigate the
Wonderful.
words themselves.
Wonderful.
But all my books are made with the intent so that children can think.
Okay.
When they're going through the story, there comes a page where the parent who's sitting with the child will obviously ask a question, what do you think is going to happen next?
Right.
And the child gets curious to figure out the end of the story.
Right.
And that's what my intent is, open up the minds of kids, and that's why I'm into the children's space as well.
Super. It's great, guys. My kids aged 3 and 5, they absolutely love her books, right? So please, check it out. I'll throw in the description. So please, go in there and figure out, what Dora is up to. So, all right. Thank you, Dora. Thank you for your introduction. And like I said, will be great to hear your insights into, what is happening from an HR point of view when we come to startups, right?
Yes.
So we'll get started, right? So I have with me a few questions that I've already kind of noted down, and will let me just kind of put them out to you. Okay, so
Sure.
Here we go. First one. How does one typically hire for a startup, right? What goes on behind the scenes, right? In a startup, some decisions kind of happen in a jiffy, right? And some kind of take a long time, right? And obviously there's a lot of cost implications in terms of hiring as well, right? So typically what goes on behind the scenes?
Sure. So hiring for a startup is different from hiring for a matured organization. In a matured organization, hiring would typically begin from budgeting stage itself. When the annual operating plan for an organization is getting made, that's when the headcount calculations, the cost impact for manpower would start in. What kind of an organization structure do we need? In this organization structure, what kind of a skill set do we need this year? In this particular skill set, where do we kind of go and get this talent from? Do we groom our internal people to take up these roles, or do we buy it from outside?
Right.
So it's a very holistic scientific exercise that happens in a mature organization. And then typically the sourcing will begin, the screening will begin.
Right.
The screening will have a lot of steps in itself. They'll have psychometric tests, they'll have as long as 8 to 10 interview rounds, then the offer discussions, and then the candidate joining is another process altogether. In a startup, it's like I have had CEOs, they've gone to networking events and with them they've brought this guy, kal se ye join kar raha hai. I'm like, which role? No idea.
We like the guy.
We like the guy.
We like the guy. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So there's no structured exercise of hiring, unfortunately, or fortunately, that happens in a startup world.
Right.
That's also the reason I saw the video as well that you did on the layoffs,
Right.
and very similar to what you told there, that you overhire,
Right.
Or you basically don't plan for the kind of hiring that you've done.
Right.
And typically in a startup, it also depends on the stage that the
Right.
startup is in.
Right.
So if it's a well-funded startup who's already gone, say, to Series B, Series C, money is not a problem. They like the guy. They are ready to pay him what he kind of demands from you. In a very early stage startup, which is still kind of scouting for investments or still kind of setting up the whole thing, which are largely bootstrapped, which are largely kind of self-funded kind of a startup.
Right.
Money would always be a challenge. So hiring from a perspective of throwing in money will be very less in these kind of startups. Typically, the sourcing mix in any organization from an HR standpoint, it will be a well-rounded pie chart, which will have, say, 20% sourcing being done through recruitment consultants. 10 to 15% being done through campus hiring.
Right.
You'll have employee referral by, the part of the slice.
Right.
Then you will have your internal job posting. So it's a
Right.
well-rounded pie chart
Correct.
that exists.
Right.
In startup, most of the hiring is either through the initial network of the
Right.
CEO or the founder,
Right.
or the first network of the few people who have already joined the startup.
And I think that also probably happens because there is a lot of emphasis on the people.
Correct.
The kind of people who will kind of take the risk in the early stages, the kind of people who will say, okay, fine, I want to work with somebody I've already worked with, or let's say my ex-boss and all that. Typically does not work out in many cases also.
Yes.
Because people come in from large companies and then they expect a similar kind of atmosphere over here.
Correct.
But as we all know, it's not the case, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. So the startup hiring is very difficult to put in black and white that this is how it happens.
Right.
It's as haphazard as I said, that you go in an event and you meet the CEO, you introduce yourself, or even on LinkedIn. A lot of CEOs,
they do that outreach.
They are very easily accessible on LinkedIn, and they scout people through LinkedIn.
Right.
So people who DM them to say that, hi, I've heard that you're kind of doing this and I'm interested. Here's my CV, can we have a chat? A lot of, at least all the CEOs that I have worked with, they have had interviews done through these LinkedIn connects. So
even I've joined a couple of startups like that. So so that's happened with me as well.
And they use a lot of free portals like Naukri or the Sasta portals where there's no money that they need to give to post job postings. So if you're interested to join a startup, be active on LinkedIn and be active on these. Your CV should be there on Naukri, for example, or on IM Jobs, for example. These are typically the places where the founders will go and hire their people.
So one question, to round this out. So typically, what happens? So let's say the CEO goes out to an event and he finds somebody, right, and he comes to you, right, and say, get this person on board, right. What do you do then? I mean, is there a discussion around budgets? Is there a discussion around, obviously there must be some sort of things that kind of, obviously go behind the scenes as well, right? I mean, you'll have a limited amount of money to play with. So how does it go from there? Is it the founder's call at that point in time? Or do you kind of, obviously take the interview in all seriousness? How does it happen?
So again, no standard answer. some cases their money has not been a problem. The
Okay.
CEO has already discussed. वो in
Okay.
fact candidate बोल देता है मैं इतने पे आऊँगा.
Oh, got it.
And the CEO says हाँ तू आ ना.
Aja, हाँ,
We'll figure it
see.
out.
Right,
Types.
right.
In other cases, we have had people who have joined us with just a notional offer letter,
Okay.
which basically said that your CTC is going to be this much,
Okay.
say 30 lakhs for example,
Mhm.
but your actual CTC that we will give you is going to be this much, which is much lesser.
Okay.
So market valuation for that guy is higher, but
Right.
what he is getting in hand
Is on the lower
is
side.
on a lower side. People join because of the
Correct.
expectations or
Of growth and maybe ESOPs and
maybe
you know,
ESOPs,
yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
or
yeah.
just the interest in being part of that kind of
Right.
a culture of startups.
Right, right.
Such notional offer letters also have the condition that as soon as we get a Series A, Series B,
Got it.
your CTC will turn out to be this much with a 10% increment,
it.
etc.
Got it. Got
So
it.
from a behind to scene thing, as I said, there's no budget that has happened.
Right.
So there's no money that I have received as an HR head to say ये तुम्हारा allocation
Right,
है.
right.
Hire people as per that.
Right.
So it's very haphazard.
Okay.
There is rarely a structure or rarely a science behind it.
Got it.
What has happened in most cases is that we've hired people, and I'll kind of talk about compensation ranges that kind of as HR people we use.
Right.
There are a lot of reports that come out
Okay.
by consulting organizations
Okay.
like Aon, etc.
Right, right.
Which gives us an indication that
what's
if you-
happening in the market.
What's happening in the market? That if you want to get somebody with
But
5
aren't
years
those reports more focused on large companies typically? But you guys get a sense.
We
I
get
mean,
a sense.
you get
We get a sense. It also has categorizations available industry-wide,
Right.
small industries
Right.
and mid industries, etc.
Right.
Or e-commerce में ये चल रहा है, or
Right.
manufacturing में ये चल रहा है.
One question that I want to kind of put out to you, right, on these reports from Aon Hewitt and all, right? So typically, can candidates also access these reports? Should people look at those reports typically to understand the kind of ranges and the kind of amounts that people are getting for their experiences and all?
These reports are available in the market.
Okay. Are they
free
paid?
of cost?
Free
No,
of
no,
cost.
free of cost.
Okay, okay.
As part of the HR community, we get it very easily
Right.
through our networks and the groups that we are part of. But I'm sure even a typical Google search should kind of pull out these reports.
Okay.
Should people go and look at it? Yeah, maybe. If you are not sure of the compensation that you should kind of demand from
Right.
from the company that you're about to
Right.
join in, then you should go and refer to these reports.
Right. It'll be good in a way also, right? I mean, typically, if there is a sort of industry-wide report that kind of is widely accessible to everybody, right?
Yes.
You will also be able to tell people that, boss, you need to benchmark yourself against
Correct.
that, right?
Correct.
Because we know the kind of overheated salaries that a few brackets are kind of have been
Yes.
asking for, and unfortunately, guys, you might not realize it, but it becomes a risk for you, right? So I'm not saying I'm all for kind of you guys making tons of money, right? But it becomes a risk. Why? Because like I said earlier as well, typically if you are kind of very high up in the salary bracket, you're kind of close to the chopping block as well.
Correct,
Right?
correct.
Right.
Absolutely.
So okay, cool. Thank you. That was a good one. So we'll move on to the next one. What are the things to look out for when typically an employee or a potential candidate is evaluating a startup job?
Okay. Startup jobs is not for everybody. You need a different kind of a personality to survive in a startup ecosystem. Irrespective of the number of years of experience that you have, the kind of work that you're supposed to do in a startup is very different to the kind of work that you will be doing in an established organization. Here in a startup, it's like a warfare. It's like being ready for a battlefield on a daily basis. You need to be very independent as an individual to do your work.
Right.
You
I agree.
will not have the luxury of a manager or a boss to tell you or mentor you or guide you. Because startup is running with a lean team any which ways. They have, for a particular skill, hired just one or two guys. They do not have like the full-blown team ki brainstorming kar lo,
Right,
group
right.
discussion kar lo, then
Right.
you make a decision.
Right.
Everybody is just hired for the role that they're supposed to do.
Right.
So you as an individual need to be somebody who knows your job really well, can work independently, have the passion to expand your horizons or think beyond.
Learn, basically.
Learn as well. But think beyond from the perspective that even the CEO, the founder, that has this dream with which he's kind of made this company, will not on a day-to-day basis get into your area of work. He'll leave it to you to kind of execute that thing. And there is no definition that from A you have to reach to point P. It's your choice whether you want to go from A to P or from to beyond to R or Z as well.
Right.
So you need to be somebody who's independent, who has the passion to not just do what you're being told, but just expand and think what are the various possibilities.
Right.
And it is also a place where typically there would be a lot of interpersonal conflicts. Much more than a mature organization. Because again, the decisions that are happening because that individual who's in that domain thinks this is the right thing to do.
Right.
Now, and we've had cases in one of the startups, the tech head said, this is the way I'm going to make my product. The team which was operating on the ground, who was going to use that product, said this is not going to work. This is not what we need. But the tech head said, no, you will adjust to this because I am the right person to tell you that this is what needs to happen. Okay. Now the CEO depends,
on which side the CEO kind of goes. Right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
So I mean, for a CEO or for a founder also, it's kind of difficult, right? I mean, they're like it's their own baby, right?
Exactly.
So it'll depend on, honestly, if it's a longer term thing, probably the CEO will say, let's go with the tech.
Correct.
If it's a shorter term thing where there's revenue, is more focus on revenue, he'll say, okay, fine, let's go with business. Let's build it out the way the business wants it to, right? But I think this happens. This is very common. This is very common.
This is very common. So these kind of conflicts, how do you navigate these conflicts? How do you be that thick-skinned an individual that on a daily basis you will stand up for what you believe in,
right,
and that you're very sure that this is what you're telling your senior stakeholders is the right thing to do.
Right.
So it basically, startup ecosystem is not for everybody.
Right.
You need to be very careful. You need to make that decision of hiring a startup if you've never had that experience.
Right.
With a lot of thought process. Speak to a lot of people who've been in the startup ecosystem, like Utkarsh, or watch his videos for that matter, to get that understanding of what basically happens inside that.
So I'll just take up one point which Dora said, right? So she said, stand up for your what you really believe in, right? Do stand up, don't lose your job. Right? No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes, you need to take such calls and say, okay, boss, no, this is not the right way to go about it. And, I will not kind of, compromise, for a particular thing. But yes, most of the times you can kind of, figure out a way, you can talk to people. One good thing, at least, that I have seen in almost in all startups is that there is a very open and healthy conversation that goes around, right? Because people know.
Just to add on to that, these set of people actually become the core group for the organization, the one that the founder kind of keeps going back to to brainstorm decisions, because typically most of the founders are also not coming with a huge years of experience behind them, they're also learning on the job along with this set of core trusted people. So if this team kind of works together, they kind of keep growing the business. Money-wise, potential-wise, obviously there's a lot of returns that this set of people can kind of get.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point, actually. People tend to forget that founders themselves are going through their own sort of HR, human capital and self-learning challenges as well, right? I mean, the expectation is कि यार ये तो founder है, ये तो CEO है, इसको सब पता होगा, right? या इसके पास बहुत पैसे होंगे, right? So कई बार होते भी हैं, right? So not that it's not there, but I think that also is a very important point. A lot of people don't realize that the founder or even the founding teams, for that matter, they're also learning on the job, right? Obviously, they've taken the onus on themselves to kind of lead the way and be the captain of the ship. But yeah, I mean that's a good point. I mean people are also learning. Okay, great. Now I'll come to the salary and the money part of it, right? Now, typically, this is a question I get asked, a lot, right? Ki, from a salary and a money part, right? What is the approach that a person should take, right? So typically, what are the things to ask about, right? Is it okay to talk about money, right? When you are kind of going in for an interview, and I want to bring in the HR perspective over here as somebody who's worked in a startup, who's worked in this environment for a long time. When I was doing this earlier, I never used to think about money. It was more about the learning and the growth opportunity कि कुछ भी काम करा लो यार हम कर लेंगे, right? And that's the way that I have learned, that's the way that I have grown, right? But as you kind of become a little bit more senior, right, or get to the mid levels, right, I think it's important for us to also understand that money matters are important, right? Because you don't want to kind of become part of a system and basically kind of feel a little disillusioned saying कि यार कम पैसों में आ गया या आ गई, right? And I should have asked for more, so I think those are the kind of things, right? So is it okay from an HR perspective, right? When should somebody who's coming into the system ask about money or talk about money, right? And should it be right in the beginning, right at the end, somewhere in the middle, right? So what has been your experience, right? And I know there's no one answer, but what has been your experience and what would you recommend?
Sure. Money matters, definitely money matters. But as you said, Utkarsh, you as an individual may look for a work experience in that kind of an environment. You may have aspirations to grow your own business later on, and for you, this money at this point in time doesn't matter. You are in there to understand the startup ecosystem. For me as an individual, because I need to run my EMIs, I have a family to support, etc., monthly income is a key consideration for me, and money will matter. Typically, my kind of people are more, your kind of people are less. So money discussions always kind of happen in the organization. You should, as a candidate, definitely ask what's the money on the table right in the beginning.
Right at the beginning.
Right in the beginning.
Right.
There should not be any room for ambiguity. But I would also say, and I think you rightly kind of mentioned this just a few questions back, be careful about inflating your compensation in the market, because you might get lured by a startup to say, we have a lot of money, tum aa jao bas, your salary is going to be this much, and you may jump at that offer because obviously who will say no to a money. But we have had a lot of people who have had to leave that high paying job, and now they're standing in the market as less because they were in their compensations got inflated,
right?
And the job reality is different. So we go back to the compensation reports, right? Somebody with 5 years of experience should be paid this much, but you're already at a higher range.
Correct.
Now, so these people actually take up the next jobs with a lesser comp. They will tell the HR, I'm willing to because I don't have a job
very
right
important
now.
point, guys. People don't realize it, right? And obviously, I think it also happens. Obviously, you kind of take a call based on what you're getting in hand, but people don't realize it that it kind of also has a huge potential to backfire as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So be careful of that. Don't get lured into higher compensations.
Right.
My recommendation to candidates would be talk money. Be careful of the compensation range that your skill set or your experience demands right now in the market. And it's very easy to do, right? If you are a fresher, you anyway don't have a say in what comp that you're getting, right? But if you are switching jobs, typically a 20-30% increment hike is considered as an average hike. So you would know that my experience in the market is this much, or my colleagues are getting paid this much.
Right.
Or these compensation reports, as I said, exist. So it's very easy to understand where in the market should your compensation range be at.
Right.
Pick up a job in that compensation range itself.
Right.
However, if you know that the startup has the potential to pay you more, get payouts more in benefits and not in your income or your CTC.
So when you say benefits, you say ESOPs or some other kind of benefits.
ESOPs, medical insurance.
You
could we have had candidates negotiate more on the number of leaves that they're getting.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
On the working model.
So flexi and I won't be in office every day, and especially now during this phase, right? I think that's something.
Exactly.
And when you come to negotiation, I mean, just a quick one on that. Is it okay to negotiate? Do we become bad guys if we kind of say कि नहीं यार इतना नहीं and all that, like Mandwali and all? Do we become bad guys?
HR does not appreciate negotiation. Okay,
but it's important,
but
right?
it is important. From a candidate standpoint, you should negotiate. We like candidates who know what their true worth is.
Okay. That's an important point, guys.
But we do not like guys or candidates who are greedy. So there's a very thin line. There are a lot of candidates who actually misuse this, right? While they're negotiating a salary, but they would know कि in the market, this is the compensation and I should demand, right? What we know as HR is that my existing employees in that particular skill, जिसको मैंने last month ही hire किया है, वो salary में नहीं है. So there is no way that I will give you a higher salary, right? So we know the compensation ranges that are there in the market. So don't try and be greedy with us. But if we are hiring you at a lesser comp because we have, say, a budgetary constraint or we want to kind of obviously play smart and save cost for our founder, you have all the right. You should negotiate, but know the maximum limit, know where you need to stop. So don't be immature about negotiations. Right. There are a lot of books, and I am a book reader and book author, but there are books that exist which will teach you good negotiations. So read them. It's going to help you negotiate your salary better. Be aware of the market realities. Also be aware of the HR that you are in discussions with. Right. A lot of startups also do not have a lot of mature HR teams in play because they're also kind of saving cost in HR. They're younger. They will not have probably experience in the compensation. Right. If you get that chance that you can sense that I can play numbers with this HR person, by all means go ahead and do it. But obviously not at the cost of inflating your salary. Right. But if there's a matured HR sitting there, be very sure after one or two discussions, she's going to the other candidate, not you. Right. And I think that's a fabulous point. I mean, don't be greedy, guys. Like Dora said, there is a thin line, right? Don't cross it, right? So HR knows the salary ranges that exist, right? So obviously kind of, when you go out and, pitch your salary, it's okay to negotiate. Yes. It's not okay to be greedy. Correct. Yeah. So I think great. I think fabulous point. Quick one on performance reviews. Typically what happens is it the same process as larger companies? I know obviously, larger companies have like very extensive performance processes. There are, obviously now we are talking about, 6 months, and I think every 3 months also I've kind of, heard. Yeah. So I think, is it the same thing, which happens in startups, right? I mean, or typically it is something which is like shorter and more ad hoc in nature. I mean, typically what have you seen? So again, performance reviews, there is no standard or a scientific process that's usually done in startups. It is... Honestly, performance reviews don't even exist in startups, in most of the startups. The performance review cycle should ideally start from your business planning, right? What is it that the business wants to achieve? The business plans are then kind of cascaded into what is it that each function kind of needs to achieve. Each function will then decide what is it that each team member of mine needs to achieve. And that's how the goal sheets for each individual, each function, each business, etc. are made, and then they're reviewed on a monthly, quarterly basis, right? This is a typical exercise that happens. Your goal sheets that are made, there are different formats that you can use, which could be a balance scorecard, which could be an OKR. So depending on what kind of performance philosophy you want to build in the organization. These performance reviews, when done right, leads to your compensation philosophy being kind of made in the organization. Do you want to differentiate your top talent? How would you retain your top talent or your niche talent? What kind of long-term incentives or short-term incentives would you build in? So this performance review is not a standalone discussion exercise between a manager and an employee. There's a lot of things that happen pre and post that whole thing. In a startup ecosystem, this is obviously not as long as established as this. But the best thing or the good thing about startups is because there are, as I said, very few people doing the same kind of job, you have the flexibility to know where what you're doing, is it actually the right thing or not?
Right.
Do you need
right.
to improve or not? The feedback that you get is more instant, quicker, and more real time.
Right.
Compared to a mature or a large organization.
Right. It'll take its own cycle in the larger organization, and here you kind of get it like very quickly.
Here, because by the virtue of the conversations,
Right.
the open environment that you talked about,
Right.
you're getting a sense of what's happening,
Right.
whether
Right.
I'm contributing in that whole business or not.
But tell me something. It happens seriously, right? I mean, there are performance reviews, proper performance reviews that are being, because the reason why I'm asking is that there are a lot of questions that come to me कि यार कुछ होता भी है, or is it like like you just mentioned कि CEO just got somebody, and there are people that the CEO has gotten on board, so they will kind of continue to do well while people can continue to work, and they continue to kind of not get good performance ratings. I'm assuming there is some sort of method to the madness, right? But typically, what is your view? I mean, typically, does it happen?
So typically, again, as I said, depends on the kind of HR that exists in that startup or the guidance that they're getting into the whole thing. I'm currently consulting with a client of mine, which were using performance reviews, but in a very, I know it or I'll do it the way I know it method. It was not how it's supposed to be done. It was not scientific. It was how the CEO or the founding team thought performance reviews should be done. And the whole company had been doing it for the past 2-3 years. The side effect of that was employees had started making noise. Why is my compensation increment lesser than this guy's increment?
Because this is a well-known fact, right? I mean, HR says please don't disclose your salary. The minute people walk out of the door, they tell everyone what has happened with them in terms of their hikes and percentages and all. So,
I would still like to believe that. No,
trust me, Dora, it doesn't happen. So I think, yeah.
But the fact of the matter being that the structured, as I said, the structured system of performance reviews, as you would find in any other bigger organization, is not there in startups.
Right.
There are a lot of startups that are doing performance reviews. There are a lot of startups that are doing performance reviews in a well-established manner as well. As I said, the discussion is not a standalone discussion. The decisions that are being made basis the performance of an individual is going to impact the compensation for that individual, is going to impact the career growth of the individual, is going to impact how or the kind of opportunities that this individual is getting inside the organization. So there are a lot of things happen, and this is the appraisal time. So by just taking this opportunity to tell your viewers that performance appraisal is an important aspect of your employment. There is an aspect called self-review, and a lot of employees don't give benefit to it. They just dismiss it as a step कि चलो कुछ भी लिख के दे देते हैं types. But that's a very important component as HR. When people have come to us to say I should have deserved a particular rating or I should have gotten promoted, we open their self-reviews with them. And the minute we see that there's just a one line written, I achieved my target. We, as HR, we can't stand with you to fight with your manager for
extremely
your promotion
important point, guys. Extremely
or
important.
your rating. So use that opportunity to tell this. It's not a review that's only going to your boss. It's a review that you are writing to the organization. It is getting recorded for your future managers, for your future HRs, for your future CEOs who may come later. That's a recorded thing about your performance for that particular time period. So exactly whatever you've done, all the contribution, your impact, the value add that you've done, so that you don't have to come and say that you deserve a promotion. It's there. It's recorded, there. Right? It's recorded. Right.
And I think that's a great point. I think typically what happens is, HR is like sort of the enemy. That's not the case, guys, right? I think, this is a great point. If you don't write in your reviews as to self-reviews as to what you have achieved, what you have done, the kind of goals that you have kind of met, right? So I think if that doesn't happen, then HR does not have any sort of basis to actually fight for you. right? When let's say you're a reporting manager, or in the normalization curve, right, that typically what happens is that people whose ratings are on the higher side, some of them are kind of shifted toward the lower band, and these things are going to help, right? I mean, these points are going to help. So yeah, so
I
great
have
point.
had discussions with the CEO when the CEO said, no, I don't believe this guy deserves a higher rating. I don't see this person working. And because as HR, I obviously don't know the work every employee is doing, right? For me, the thing to stand by the rating, the higher rating for that individual, is the assessment, the self-assessment and the manager assessment.
Yeah.
And I open it in front of the CEO and have fought for a higher rating for the individual because the person has done what he's supposed to do.
Right.
You may not, you may perceive the person is not working.
Correct.
But the person is actually working. So
yeah,
to the point that it makes a lot of difference.
Fabulous point. Great, cool. Now coming to a little bit of a tricky topic, letting go of people, right? So it's a difficult one, it's a tricky one, because at the end of the day, HR is the one which is kind of sort of taking or rather executing this entire piece, right? Obviously the decision is a company decision and everybody is involved, and it's not an easy decision, guys. Trust me, have been there on the other side. Like I said, I've been fired as well. I've been on the other side as well, right? It's not an easy decision, right, for everybody involved. So how do you go about it? I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do, right? I mean, to talk to employees and tell them that hey, you're not part of our plans anymore. So what happens? I mean, there are financial kind of elements involved in it as well, but typically what happens behind the scenes? I think it'll be great if people can just understand that aspect.
Sure. So I have had a lot of experience with layoffs across, I think, my 16 years. 80% of that has, every year I've seen a layoff.
Wow,
and I have
okay.
kind of been involved in that layoff exercise. The worst thing as an HR professional that one can do. However, as you rightly said, it's a business decision and you kind of need to kind of do that. A younger organization, which has kind of been in the system for some at least, good 10 plus 15 years of experience, when layoffs happen in this organization, typically 95% of the times it would be performance based.
Okay.
The person is basically not adding value to the organization, or the person has reached saturation. There's nothing beyond that the organization kind of can take out from that individual. And then those decisions are made basis the performance ratings and the potential of the individual. In younger organizations, which are between 0 to or 1 to 5-7 years of existence, such decisions are business decisions, which would typically be around I'm closing this Gujarat operations, I'm closing my Maharashtra operations. So the entire team that's there, irrespective of the performance, they basically get part of this entire layoff exercise.
That kind
I've shut my plant.
Right.
There's nothing that you can't do anything about it, right? So those are then decisions that are kind of taken holistically for that particular team and nothing to do with performance.
Right.
The good thing now is, as HR, we are very obviously conscious of the layoffs that are happening. 5 years back, layoffs used to be called as a negative term. We would be wary to hire such people who've been laid off. We would think, अच्छा नहीं होगा ये बंदा तभी lay off हुआ है.
Right.
It is not the case anymore. As HR, we are sure, or we're conscious of the fact that this is happening across the industries.
Correct.
What is happening now with established organizations like a Google, Facebook, Amazon, etc., the layoffs
that kind happening, of just validates the point even more.
Exactly,
right? So,
exactly. Those are obviously an aberration that we are also kind of experiencing for the first time, right? And they've said that these are not performance-led layoffs. These are business decision-led layoffs. People would be, I am sure there would be tons of companies wanting to hire these people right now. All the startup CEOs that I have worked with, they used to tell us to get people from Google or Facebook to come and join us, right? So these are like valued assets for the talent market right now. So layoffs is not a negative term anymore. It is, we understand that, we acknowledge that. The problem comes is the gap between the employment. What are you doing as an individual in that gap? Have you just given up? कि भैया जब job आएगा, I'll figure out that मैं आ जाऊंगा और भैया I am a stud, you come and hire me.
Correct.
That's not an approach that we kind of look for.
Right.
What you do during your employment gap is something that
It's
we
very
really
important.
kind of assess you on, right? Are you using your skills? Are you getting into networking, for example? Are you getting into a hobby? Are you using
Upskilling yourself,
upskilling
maybe.
yourself?
Yeah.
Are you using your time in a manner that is benefiting you?
Right.
We have hired people who went on yoga retreats
Wow. Okay.
for 3-4 months.
Wow.
They were without job. They said we just needed the time off.
Okay.
Awesome. You
Wow.
were doing something for yourself.
Right.
So just don't give it up
Right.
during that time.
Yeah.
Constantly keep working because this too shall pass, as a social media video that's going on. This too shall pass, and you will get a job, and you will have to tell what you did when you didn't have a job.
Right.
So keep doing something in that time is the only suggestion or a good suggestion I think that I can provide.
Right.
Otherwise, layoffs is not a bad term.
Right.
It is inevitable. I've hired an organization from scaled it up to 10,000 and brought it up to 2,000 by the time I left.
Wow. Okay.
So that kind of a layoff thing. Have received suicide threats.
Oh my God.
My CEO's family was threatened.
Oh my God.
That I'm going to kidnap your daughter when your wife is going to drop her to the bus stop. As HR, my team members used to get suicide SMSs.
Wow.
And at night, 11 p.m., my team member would call, "Ma'am, what's happening? What am I supposed to do?
God.
How am I supposed to react?" I have led conversations where either individuals have just completely broken down.
Right.
People have abused us,
Wow.
not caring whether the other person is a female or not. We've received abuses. We have also had people who've taken it absolutely graciously to say, "I understand." And trust me, there was a very good organization that I was part of where the CEO said, all the layoffs that I'm doing right now, it will be my endeavor to get everybody back as soon as I can. And that CEO actually did that.
Actually happened, yeah.
So these are also examples that exist. And when you're doing that conversation, if you're abusing the HR person or if you're abusing the management, we are also individuals, right? We're also human beings. It's not something that we're doing out of will. What has happened to you will happen to us as well. That's the longer term.
That's what happens. Yeah, absolutely.
Thing as well.
Yeah.
So we are not at fault. So kindly, I'm not saying accept it graciously, but it is what it is. We've all been through it, and Utkarsh has been, you've been very helpful to people to kind of talk about your own experience about it. So it happens is that take it positively. The world is taking it positively. We are not banishing those CVs to say we are not going to hire them. We are absolutely more than eager to hire people who've had great experiences in startups, even if those startups have failed. I proudly talk about the startups that I've been part of which failed. Because those learnings are very different to what a learning from a successful startup is.
Absolutely.
So it's just that, just take it with a pinch of salt. Another, suggestion that I could also give is use your money that you have, that you're getting on a monthly basis, judiciously. And this is especially true the females working in the startup world. As females, we are very bad with our financial management. But start saving enough so that you have at least a leeway of 3 to 6 months. If something were to happen, you at least have something that you can kind of fall back on. So your investments need to be really, really careful. Don't just splurge on your trips. Also do your investments and then splurge on your trips.
Superb. I think that's like very, very good advice, and I think thank you. I think this will be very, very helpful for anybody who kind of watches this. Any other thing that you would want to kind of say to our viewers?
So again, 2-3 things that I think are important from a startup ecosystem perspective. Keep upskilling yourself in a manner that is relevant to what's happening in the market right now, because market is very dynamic. The startup ecosystem is in that dynamic, in the dynamic ecosystem, as I said. So don't just assume that what got you here is going to take you there as well.
Absolutely.
So what you're doing right now, keep enriching your experience from that perspective that you're able to grow ahead as well. There are a lot of startups where there's no work. They either overhire or they don't hire as per the skills. That I was part of a startup where I thought what I am doing should have been done by somebody who's junior to me. Why have they hired me, or why are they paying me the salary to do this work? And so I would finish my job, in 2-3 hours and just sit idle. But don't sit idle. And I didn't sit idle that point in time. I focused on my writing, and that's what I'm using now.
Right.
So any such opportunity that you get, use it to hone your skills in a manner that it gives you benefits later on. Moonlighting has been a famous topic.
Absolutely.
You should do a video on that as well.
Absolutely.
But moonlighting as HR, it is negative from the perspective that if you're doing the same work for a competitor or any other company, absolutely a no-no.
Right.
But if you're doing some work which is for your own interest, upskilling, hobby, or a future course of income that you want to build in, absolutely, as long as you're getting free time, please do that.
Right.
I'm not saying start earning money by stretching your working hours, but start investing in yourself as an individual.
Right.
Because this is very, very critical from a long-term perspective. Startup jobs is not something from where you'll retire. You will have a time period where
absolutely.
Either you're without job or you're on your own.
Correct.
Or you're just scouting in the market for your job, next job.
Right.
So because you've been investing in your skills, you've had a financial backing, you will have higher chances of kind of getting something. Right. And the last thing is build your personal brand. Right.
Very important. Very important, guys.
Job title right now is so important. When you're on your LinkedIn, you're able to kind of talk about your job title and then do posts which are related to the work that you're doing.
Right.
Tomorrow, if that job title goes away, people will still relate to the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So they reach out to you for opportunities on their own. Or if you were to stand up and start, your own business or anything in the startup that you're interested in, you'll have people who are similar minded because you build that network.
Absolutely.
So build your personal brand.
Absolutely.
That's critical, super critical. Most of the people that I meet, they say, I don't like writing on LinkedIn. I'm a shy person. It's nothing to do with your shyness or your it's a necessity now.
Right. I agree, completely agree. And I think honestly, this is what we've also been doing, right? I mean, she's very active on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, right? And the whole idea is obviously kind of to build this sort of body of work where kind of people come to our pages, and obviously it kind of helps people, right? Obviously we are on our own at this point in time, but even if we weren't, right, I'm assuming we probably have reached that kind of stage where we are in the zone of kind of just putting it out there, so that let's say tomorrow down the line, if we want to kind of be on our own, then we kind of
absolutely.
And
that networking that you build, that the network that you build either on a social media or your office is so important for you to leverage on, right? The fact that I am doing a first video is because Utkarsh is a gem of a person. I know that he's here out in the open to help people. And that's a common purpose that I kind of relate to. And just because he's a nice person, we built that rapport and networking while working together, is that we are here now for each other. Similarly, your friends or your network. So, people who kind of pick fights in office on a daily basis, that I don't care, this is my job and I don't care about hurting anybody's emotions, you will be out on your own soon. That is a hard reality. Don't think it's happened to them, it will not happen to you. It will. And then only your set of people will kind of reach out. And again, there's a very good book, there's a very good concept which also talks about it. That whenever you are in need, your own immediate set of family is going to help you only 1%. The larger help comes from your network of networks. So if I tomorrow need a full-time job, I reach out to Utkarsh. It's very rare that Utkarsh will be able to help me. What he will do is reach out to his network.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
that network is probably going to help me.
Absolutely. That's what happens. Yeah.
So that network will only talk to you or
Right.
would want to work with you only
Right.
if you've been able to establish what is it that
Absolutely.
Utkarsh is talking about me to them
Right,
will
right.
enable a job for me.
Right.
Right.
And it's not this what happens is that this is not superficial then. There is a serious understanding of who the other person is,
Absolutely.
right? Who understand the kind of value that people add. So that happens, right? I mean, people reach out to me saying that, hey, can you refer my CV to your network, right? Now somebody that I know is a good person, or somebody that I've worked with closely, or somebody that I know will add value to any organization, I'll probably go out of my way a little bit to say, yaar boss, yes, I have referred it to people, and then I'll also follow up.
Correct.
Right? Typically, otherwise what happens is, you want to help people, right? But after a point in time, you send out the CV and then you kind of, just sit back, right? That's typically what happens, right? I'm
Exactly.
being very honest about it. But if the network is good, if you kind of, understand the other person well, right? And those things will not happen overnight.
Correct.
And that will definitely not happen when you've not spoken to somebody for throughout the year, and now that you're looking out for a job, you reach out to that person and say कि यार ये मेरा CV है यार, या please एक बार so that won't happen,
That
right?
that never happens.
Never happens. As much as anybody would say, that never happens, and I think it's very important. I think that's a great point.
Coming to the first question now, I
Yeah.
think it was the end, but just linking it back to the first thing that you talked about, how does hiring happen in startups?
Right.
The network, the CEO's network or his immediate people's network, this is exactly what the network that we're talking about,
Absolutely.
right? They
Bang
will
on.
reach out to network that I'm looking for somebody in marketing. They will reach out to I'm looking for somebody
Right.
that my tech team.
Right.
And these are the CVs then that will go to the startup.
Right,
And then
right.
this is the startup which will turn into a great valuation
Yeah.
and you'll earn a lot of ESOPs.
Superb. Great. That's outstanding, Dora. Thank you so much for your time. I think this has been like hugely helpful, and I'm sure it's going to help everybody who's kind of looking at this video. You will find Dora's email, LinkedIn, and all the details in the video description. Please have a look. Please reach out to her directly. She's very helpful, right? She would love to answer any queries or any questions that you might have. And thank you so much for your time. And like always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much, Dora.
My
and
pleasure.
it's been
Thank
a
you
pleasure
so much.
having you with us. Right?
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. Thank you. Bye, everyone.